reasonably expeditious manner. At this hearing, the interested parties are the city, the college, and the appellants. Any interested party may present testimony and evidence to substantiate any material fact, and any interested party may cross-examine opposing witnesses presenting testimony or evidence at the hearing. Cross-examining is limited to the evidence or testimony of the witness being cross-examined. The city will go first. This is the order. The city is going to go first. The college will go second. The appellants will go third. Barring any specific request or representation by an appellant, the appellants will be called in alphabetical order by last name. If the appellants would have another way that they wish to approach this, in terms of perhaps there's a spokesman for the group or whatever that we don't know about, please indicate so at the beginning of the part where the appellants present their evidence. Otherwise, we'll go alphabetically by last name. I am directing that any party intending to cross-examine any other party reserve their cross-examination or their questions until everyone has had a chance, had their first opportunity to present their position or their evidence. And so, in other words, if you have a question or a statement, write it down. We do want to hear from you, but just in the interest of efficiency, we'd like you to do that when you are called upon to speak. If an appellant has a question of the city, that question should be reserved until the end of the appellant's presentation of the evidence. In other words, till everyone is done. We don't want to get sidetracked. The cross-examination will proceed in the same order as the presentations. So city, college, appellants. Members of the tree commission may also ask questions of any of the witnesses following the same procedure. And I would ask my fellow tree commissioners also to hold your questions until we get to that part. The host of the meeting, which is the City of Tacoma Park, will control access to the virtual floor at my direction. You may indicate your desire for access to the floor by using the raise your hand button feature on Zoom, at which point I may recognize you depending on where the hearing is in the foregoing procedure. And just in full disclosure, I may miss the hand raise icon, but the city will, they have ways of pinging me if I miss it. So in these appeals, the tree commission always begins, even in normal times, with the presumption that the decision of the city with respect to the application is correct. So the burden of proof is on the appellants to show by the preponderance of evidence that the preliminary decision should be changed or modified or whatever is at stake in the hearing. But this presumption is rebuttable. So we do want to hear what you have to say. The commission's decision must be based on substantial evidence, though, meaning such relevant evidence as a reasonable mind might accept as adequate to support a conclusion. The issue before the commission, as I said earlier, is whether the subject permit should be approved, disapproved, or approved with modifications. That's it. All in light of the factors that are set forth in the chapter of the city code, which is the tree ordinance. If the chair, me, in my discretion, determines that other issues have been raised, I may exercise my discretion to terminate that discussion of those collateral issues and move forward. Okay. Testimony before this body is under oath. And in the interest of brevity, I'm going to administer the oath of office, once for all those. I'm just going to administer it once for all of those who intend to testify or may be called to testify on behalf of an interested party. So when it comes time for you to testify, please state your name and address and affirm that your testimony is under oath and you are about under the oath that you are about to take. I will now administer the oath. So if those of you who will be witnesses. You can follow along at home. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, say I do.
I do.
Okay.
I do.
All right. I'm going to take it as given that everyone has said I do. Due to the remote nature of the hearing, documentary record will be provided for review by the host of the meeting, sharing it on the screen. If you wish to refer to a particular item in the record, please refer to it by the exhibit letter, the red page number at the bottom of the page. Please exercise patience as it takes some time to pull up the record for the display. And I'm now going to introduce and turn over to Mike Rind. He is counsel for the city, and he will now identify the evidence that's currently included in the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, everybody. What I'd like to do is just actually first run through a list of people from whom the city received appeals to have that in the record, and then I'll move on to the exhibits. By the deadline, by April 4th of 2020, the city had received 12 emails, which apparently represented the following 16 people, and I'll apologize in advance if I mangle your name. Chris Gill and Bill Brady, Ron and Stephanie Murphy, Elliot Van Skyke, Paul Krastowski, Marcy Stickle and George French, Julie Schmidt, Allison Raphael, Francois DeReaper, Marilyn Abbott, Ruth Skarsgård and Martin Lowry, and Richard Weil. We did have notice from Miss Abbott that she would not be testifying, and we did have notice from Mr. Krastowski that he would not be participating. Now, as to the exhibits, the exhibit list consists of the following. On behalf of the city, Exhibit A is the tree removal application. Exhibit B is the tree removal preliminary response number 1. Exhibit C is the tree removal preliminary response number 2. Exhibit D are trees proposed for removal sorted by condition and reason for removal in an Excel spreadsheet. The other matters were PDF, if I forgot to mention that, by the way. Exhibit E is a tree protection plan, drawings F1 and F2 as they were presented back in March, or available back in March. And that's it for the city exhibits. The college exhibits include the following. Exhibit A is a response memo to the Tacoma Park City Forester. Exhibit B is the college's pre-hearing statement. Exhibit C is the college's PowerPoint presentation. Exhibit D and E are drawings again, F1 and F2. Exhibit F is L301 planting plan. Exhibit G is L311 planting plan. Exhibit H is L312 planting plan. Exhibit I is L3.13 planting plan. And the next two I actually have to correct my own typographical errors. I apologize on the exhibit list that was provided earlier, but Exhibit J is actually the L3.14 planting plan. Exhibit K is planting plan details, labeled also as L400. We did receive 2 exhibits after the deadline. One was the college's response to the city's Exhibit D, which they supplemented, and that's College Supplemental Exhibit number 1, also labeled as City's Exhibit D with removal clarification by the college. And we received an exhibit from Appellant Cordes, which we have labeled Appellant Cordes' Exhibit 1. And that's all the documents that have been provided for inclusion in the record. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Um, I will now turn to the city to begin their intervention. I'm not sure who will be speaking for the city. Is that Daryl or Keith?
That'll be Mr. Keith Pritchard will be speaking on behalf of the city at this time.
Okay. So Keith, if you unmute, please, and also state your name, address, and confirm that you know you're under oath. Thank you.
Yes, hi, Keith Pitchford, 2213 40th Place Northwest, Washington, D.C. I understand I am under oath. I'm a consulting arborist and have been for 24 years now. Based in D.C., but work a lot in Tacoma Park. Anything else you need?
No, thank you. Go ahead. I assume you have a prepared presentation.
Well, I don't know so much prepared. I was asked by Daryl to look at this application, in particular the spreadsheet Exhibit D, and to look at the calculations and the process that was used, which I've done over the last couple of days. And I find that the information on that exhibit to be quite accurate. I looked at the steps that Jan van Soepen took when he did his rating calculations per tree. I found his calculations to be correct. I compared the numbers on the spreadsheet that were provided by the college and those provided by the city. I found that the information was generally consistent. I think the diameter measurements that the city arrived at were in 99% of the time higher. So a larger diameter than was submitted by the college. And I understand there were some condition ratings that were adjusted because of the scoring, which is really the critical factor here, is what the tree rating sheet comes up to in a numerical number, because that determines the replacement trees. But I did not find any major inconsistencies with the exhibit. And I looked at the site plans and I have a pretty good understanding about what's proposed by the college and what the impact would be. I have not had a large amount of time to really look in the weeds in terms of the tree preservation plan, but I don't think that that's on the docket. But in terms of the spreadsheet, I did not see any major errors in either process or findings on the spreadsheet.
All right. If you've got nothing further now, then we can move on to the college. But I would say there may be specific questions about specific trees or the numbers of trees permitted to be removed versus the ones that were not permitted to be removed and why, or whatever. So be prepared to address those if they come up later.
That's fine. Mm-hmm.
All right. Thanks. So who will be speaking for the college then?
Mr. Chair, for the record, Suli Cho with the law firm of Miller, and Canby, representing Montgomery College on this matter. Before we move into presenting my principal witness, I just wanted to give a very quick overview of the various witnesses that are here tonight and available. My principal witness will be Mr. Wade Fu of the Smith Group, and he will be taking us through the college's PowerPoint presentation that has been submitted and is identified as College Exhibit C. And then there are other supporting expert witnesses. Mr. Fu is an expert in the field of architecture and site design. You have resumes, CVs that have been provided in advance by the college for the expert witnesses that are here tonight. That includes Mr. Andrew Striegel, Matthew Ernest, Terry Burns, Steve Mays, In addition, we have David Coleman, who is a project director with Barton Mallow, the general contractors on the project, and Susan Madden with the College Office of the President. She is the Chief Government Relations Officer, available as more of a rebuttal witness or to answer questions. But I just wanted to sort of lay out the various witnesses. But again, they're mostly the supporting witnesses, and my main principal witness will be Mr. Fu. As you could see from the PowerPoint that was submitted, there are a number of slides, but we will move through them at a good pace. But in order to sort of give you a quick roadmap of what you will be presented with, just wanted to give you an outline of the slides.
Before you do that, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but can you just confirm that you know you're under oath?
Yes, I am under oath.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I do know. Thank you.
Yeah.
So for the first grouping of slides, it's really mostly geared toward orienting the commission to the full scope of the Leggett Building project, to understand, the land disturbance that is implicated by the full scope of the project. The second grouping of slides are intended to show how and where the project's required land disturbance intersect with the existing trees on the site, resulting in the need for the removal. And then the third grouping is to show the college's proposed planting plan. I understand that may not be the core focus of the commission, but we do believe that a part of the findings of the commission is to, in terms of the decision on the removal request, to understand the mitigation and what will be protected and preserved, in lieu of the, even though we are having to remove a number of trees for the project. So with that, and I would also just make note that the PowerPoint presentation is essentially, the content is essentially the technical plans that are also in the exhibit list. The forest conservation plans, the tree protection plan, planting plan, all of the technical plans we've attempted to present in a more user-friendly and digestible manner with color coding so that it could be more easily understood, because we understood the technical documents can be overwhelming. So with that, I would just introduce my principal witness, Mr. Wade Fu, and ask him to identify himself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Wade Fu. I recognize I am under oath. I'm a principal at Smith Group in Washington, D.C. I've been with Smith Group for almost 15 years now. Our office address is 1700 New York Avenue, Suite 100, Washington, D.C. And I serve as the project architect for the new Leggett Math and Science building for Montgomery College.
Great, thank you. Let's now begin with the first grouping of the PowerPoint slides, Mr. Fu, and go quickly through how the college got to the approved footprint for the new Leggett building.
Okay, bear with me while I share my screen and kind of do some technical stuff. Okay. So I'd like to begin with slide 2, just to give you all a bit of context of how we got to here. At the outset of this project, we were given a series of design directives directly responding to community concerns. And those concerns chiefly were to, again, protect that park-like green space along Tacoma Avenue, making sure that building setbacks were in keeping with the Falcon Hall, and making sure that we design the building in a way that minimizes the perceived height and bulk from the surrounding neighborhood, going so far as to take advantage of the topography and even burying the building to minimize that perceived height. On slide 3, keeping these concerns in mind, we went through a very public and very iterative and collaborative process, and arrived at a concept design and site design that included tree removals and plantings that was ultimately approved by the Montgomery County Planning Board for mandatory referral in early January of 2019. Slide 4, just to give everyone a quick overview of what the general overall sequence of work would be. We start with the existing site on slide 4. On slide 5, we recognize that the existing Science South, Falcon Hall, and tennis court structures would need to be demolished to make room for the new building that has been reviewed and approved at mandatory referral on slide 6. On slide 7, I just want to acknowledge that some time had passed after mandatory referral, and the building size was reduced and the building redesigned on slide 8 to better align with budget concerns and neighborhood concerns. Moving on to slide 9, just to give everyone a sense of the building footprint in 3 dimensions relative to the site. Because we are constructing a basement level, again, to reduce the building height, major portions of the site are disrupted in order to excavate and construct the basement level, even factoring in the existing, the demolition of the existing building to fully remove the foundations of those existing buildings to create a stable building pad. And as a result, that disruption to the site is greater than the boundaries of, let's say, the faces of the existing structures. And as a result, it impacts the critical root zones of the trees of this core of campus to the extent that those trees would not be able to be preserved. And on slide 10, I just want to give everyone a quick understanding of the building massing. We've actually pushed most of the building massing onto Fenton Street and really spread out the building to actually maximize the footprint to take advantage of the topography.
Great, thank you. Now that we have a good understanding of the proposed building and the scope of the project with regard to the new structure, can you please describe to the commission the infrastructure improvements related to the project and the demolition activity associated that went into defining the project's required land disturbance?
So on slide 11, in order to define the land disturbance, we actually have to work through all the component parts and pieces of the building in order to actually draw the boundary of that land disturbance. And that boundary is what we refer to as the limits of that disturbance, or LOD for short. And what that is within the limits of disturbance, or LOD, is where construction activity and site disturbance is slated to occur. So at the beginning, what we do is we simply overlay the proposed building footprint onto the existing site condition so that we understand kind of a macro scale what the relative site disturbance would be. So if you sort of look at the diagram, you can see how the new building clearly overlaps with the existing buildings, which necessitates their removal. And because this is a public facility on a public campus, the existing site flow and patterns would also need to be remade and redone in order to accommodate the new building design. On slide 12, addressing the site design issues, starting with site access for vehicles. Working our way around the site, we start with loading and service in between Science North and the drop off along Fenton Street, really organizing those major vehicle access functions away from the neighborhood directly to address community concerns. And then off of Tacoma Avenue, we've reduced and shrunk the existing parking lot footprint to, again, reduce the amount of traffic that would be experienced on Tacoma Avenue in direct response to community concerns. On slide 13, the building needs site access for pedestrians. And again, because of the challenging nature of the site, this building will need multiple access points in order for it to be ADA accessible. And in the same line of thinking regarding site accessibility in terms of ramping and stepping, et cetera, on the site, that all of that work needs to be a little more gentle in order for a little more gentle and sweeping in order for that work to be accessible. And similarly, we also need to consider firefighter access, making sure we have clear access routes around the building. Slide 14, of course, the building needs fire truck access. On slide 15, going underground now, the building needs natural gas service. On slide 16, the building needs electrical service. On slide 17, because this is a campus of buildings and because the new building is a science building and because adjacent buildings are academic buildings, the college campus needs robust telecom infrastructure to support not only the building but also to the adjacent buildings, which explains why the telecom infrastructure extends to other buildings on campus. And I just want to point out the telecom routing in between Science North and Resource Center was adjusted and worked in conjunction with the city to save this row of trees outside of the Resource Center. So it's always a series of trade-offs, because in this case, saving this row of trees implies that this telecom routing would actually disrupt the trees that are closer to Science South, which would have already been which already would have been unable to be preserved because of the demolition of Science South, and we'll review that in later slides. On slide 18, the building needs water service. We had evaluated several water lines under the adjacent streets. On Fenton Street, there was no available water service. On New York Avenue, because of the new fire hydrant that we need to locate along Fenn Street to service the life safety of the new building and adjacent buildings, routing a new water line from New York Avenue to that location would be much more disruptive and would not be efficient and would disrupt more site than necessary. So that leaves us with the connection point along Tacoma Avenue at this location just east of the building. And because we are committed to preserve trees along Tacoma Avenue, the location that we are left with being able to route the new water line to the new building is actually right around this existing curb cut that's at Tacoma Avenue. And we also have to consider the street trees across the street, and we are locating our connection in between two mature trees so as to avoid the critical root zones of those trees. On slide 19, the new site condition needs stormwater management to meet all the Maryland environmental regulations. For this project, we will be implementing 7 new stormwater management facilities that are microbiome retention facilities, commonly known as rain gardens or green infrastructure. All the piping will be installed on areas that have been regraded or reworked, but we have to basically install a section of piping just south of the commons in order to connect to the primary outlet underneath Tacoma Avenue. And in fact, we've actually adjusted the routing of that stormwater piping to avoid trees along Tacoma Avenue. On slide 20, the building needs sanitary and sewer. And on slide 21, the campus needs backup power for adjacent buildings and the new building. On slide 22, when we aggregate all this work together and look at it holistically, the design process is to work backwards and forwards and to actually coordinate these utilities among themselves and to make coordination with future planting plans and to make fine adjustments when needed to preserve trees. And that is all to say, all those fine adjustments, once they're made, they define the boundary line, which is shown in purple, which is the limits of disturbance. And in fact, what we have done through all those fine adjustments is to highly constrain the limits of disturbance line, especially as you can see along Tacoma Avenue. We've even created a donut hole within the limits of disturbance to preserve a tree that is actually below regulated size. The college will be routing a water line underneath that tree at a greater expense. We've also adjusted and constrained and squeezed the limits of disturbance around the water line on Tacoma Avenue. On New York Avenue, we've adjusted and constrained the limits of disturbance to only areas where there would be limited site disturbance. And similarly, in between Science North and Resource Center, we have adjusted and routed the limits of disturbance in conjunction with the city to preserve as many trees as possible.
Great. Now can we move into the second grouping of slides that you've prepared? And if you could please identify the locations of the regulated trees that are being removed to achieve the project and explain why their removal is unavoidable.
So all of the regulated trees they occur within the limits of disturbance. And actually through this process, in working with the city, we've actually reduced the number of trees removed from our initial application. And I just want to unpack sort of the various sequences of work that occur over time so we can understand how the site changes over time and how that relates to tree removal. So starting with slide 24, these trees highlighted in orange are directly impacted by the demolition of Science South, Falcon Hall, and tennis courts. The excavation work required for these buildings is such that the existing building foundations will need to be removed in order to create a safe and reliable building pad for the new building. And that excavation work means that the limit of that disturbance would exceed beyond the face of this building. So just to point out a few trees, T38, T40, and T41, these are white oaks with large critical root zones where the demolition of, say, existing Science South would impact those root zones such that those trees would not be able to be preserved. And if somehow those trees were to somehow survive the demolition process, the construction of the new building basement would further impact those root zones such that those trees would not be able to be preserved. And I just want to point out that, you know, the college did a great job with Exhibit D listing showing where each tree conflicts with what sort of site utility or site work or building removal or new building that may occur. I just want to point out that these trees at this moment in time, due to building removal, they simply would not be able to be preserved.
I'm sorry,
Slide.
were
Go
you
ahead.
referencing the city's Exhibit D and their attributions for reasons for removal?
Yes, I was referencing the city's Exhibit D, and we had sort of made some finer clarifications to those trees and their reason for removal.
And the finer clarifications that that you were able to provide, could you just very quickly give an overview? Are you in disagreement with the attributions or the reasons for removal identified by the city Exhibit D? But what are your comments on Exhibit D?
My disagreements are very subtle, and so I think when the city attributes reason for removal as being in the building footprint, the reality is that the reason for removal for those trees actually within the building footprint is attributable to the demolition of the building. And the demolition of the existing buildings will impact the critical root zones of those adjacent trees such that those trees are simply unable to be preserved.
Thank you.
Moving on to slide 25, we're now at a different point in time where we have to consider Now that the buildings have been removed and the new building foundations are being dug, we need to consider the areas surrounding the building to create the underground infrastructure and site infrastructure to support the new building and the new campus design. And so these trees highlighted in blue are removed because of the activities of site utility installation, grading, and new paving. Starting with the surface level work, the gray hatch represents the paving that will be removed, and you can start to see that the trees such as T124, T123, 112, and 101, they're in pretty compacted areas, and the activity of removing the surface paving starts to disrupt those root zones. On slide 26, as we move underground, the installation of all those utilities coordinated amongst each other, they will further impact the critical root zones of all these trees along Fenton Street, the trees along Tacoma Avenue curb cut, and the trees at just northeast of the new building. And on slide 27, once all those underground utilities are dug and installed, there's the final finish grading work, which will further disrupt the site. And the finish grading, again, is necessary to create a safe and accessible site for the students and the community, and to maintain ADA accessibility for the new building.
Great. Besides the 56 regulated trees, are there any unregulated trees that will need to be removed as well?
Yes. So on slide 28, we've gone ahead and cataloged also the unregulated trees. In our opinion, the unregulated trees that will be removed. I just want to point out that T115 and T51 were trees that the city notes to be regulated. And the reason for that discrepancy, I think very plainly, is that time has passed between our initial survey and our initial submission of our documents, and the trees have grown. And whoever is measuring the tree may have picked a different point of the tree to assess the overall tree caliper. Regarding the trees that we think are below regulated size that are removed, the trees in light orange, these trees are actually likely would not survive the initial demolition, but they also occur within the building footprint. The trees in blue, in between Science North and Resource Center, those trees would be disturbed by underground utility installation and new paving. The trees in between Commons and Resource Center, T51, would likely not survive regrading and installation of stormwater piping. And T165 is small enough and below regulated size that we can replant it and move it to a different location on site. This grouping of trees just southeast of Commons Building, again, we've made great efforts to route the stormwater piping to avoid as many trees as we could. But the trees that are below regulated size intersect with that stormwater line.
All right. So now, what can you tell us about the health and condition of the trees that are proposed to be removed? And while you are doing so, can you please identify any trees that have already been removed and explain the circumstances of their removal?
So on slide 29, first I'd like to share a composite diagram of the trees removed. Circled in magenta are trees that are in below average or poor condition. And when you take a step back and you look at those trees in poor condition relative to the existing site, you can see how those trees have compacted root zones, or they're simply too close to the building. And for us, as we move forward with the replanting and design process of the new planting plan, that is to inform how the new planting plan will create adequate space for the newly planted trees to grow and mature. And on slide 30, in that same vein, the trees noted in the X's were trees that were removed on or about February 10th, 2020 due to abatement activities. Those trees were removed because the subcontractor needed adequate space to safely remove the asbestos panels on Falcon Hall and did not want to create any dangerous dust or debris. And to that end, the new plantings would not be planting trees so close to the existing building. And then the trees highlighted in magenta dots, these trees were removed by the city in December of 2019, and rightly so, because those trees were in deep decline and had a lot of dieback for those trees. And as you can see, those trees, again, are in a pretty compacted tree box, which likely contributed to their decline. And just so everyone is aware, we believe those 3 trees were included in the original count of the 59 trees on our tree removal permit.
So first, Mr. Fu, could you with your cursor just identify the 3 street trees that were removed and added to the replacement requirement?
Yes, the three street trees that were removed are T111, 110, and 109. They exist just southwest of Falcon Hall, and they are pin oaks.
So at this point, if you could clarify the numbers at this point, because at the start of the hearing, I believe you heard the chair summarize that the city counted 61 trees, regulated trees, that are included in the college's tree removal approval. Based on your presentation, if you could just explain how we get to, or how the city got to the 61 number, and explain the college's number, and if there is an explanation for the difference.
I believe there's an explanation. The city's number of 61 that was referenced earlier, the initial discrepancy we believe would be the 2 trees that we believe are below regulated size that have grown and are now the city considers regulated size. When we exclude those trees, that number goes down to 59. And then when we exclude further the 3 trees that were already removed by the city, the number goes down to 56.
So are you saying in your opinion that then the numbers are explainable, they're not in conflict?
Yes, I believe in my opinion, the numbers are explainable and non-conflict.
Can you move on and tell us about the trees that are just beyond the limits of disturbance that might be somewhat impacted, and how will they be protected, preserved under the college's tree protection plan?
So on slide 31, for trees just beyond the limits of disturbance, we have to consider the tree is not just the tree trunk, but of course the critical root zones below the tree. And so the approach of protecting those trees is, 1, limit the activities of the limits of disturbance as it relates to those trees by simply adjusting the line of that limits of disturbance, to erecting physical barriers such as tree protection fencing, and then implementing tree protection measures to reduce the shock of the disturbance that are within the boundary of the limits of disturbance, with root pruning, with mulch matting, with cambistat treatment. And all of those treatments would be done by a Maryland licensed tree expert. And in addition to the physical effort of protecting these trees, of course, there would be oversight and monitoring throughout the construction process. So the design team, the licensed tree expert hired by the contractor, the city, and the community would likely work in conjunction over the course of construction to monitor the construction site. And then I just want to point out on slide 31 that in addition to the measures to protect the trees physically, there are 3 trees that are actually protected but have been assessed a replacement calculation. I think because of some disagreement between the city and our professional opinion, the city feels like those trees likely would be impacted to the point where they would not be able to be protected. And as a result, adding the replacement canopy requirement is part of the spirit of tree protection. And on slide 32, there are trees that are just so far outside of the limits of disturbance that they would not actually be impacted by the limits of disturbance, but we want to recognize that those trees are physically there and that the entire team is aware of their existence so as to take greater care around the project site itself.
Great. So before we get into the planting plan, could you just quickly summarize your understanding of what the replacement tree requirement that has been calculated as a result of these removals has been determined by the city?
So the replacement requirement as calculated by the city's Exhibit D in total is replacement of 152 trees. In the new planting plan, the new plan will plant 101 trees of the 152, and the balance will be paid with a fee in lieu. For these 3 trees, I believe the city has assessed a replacement value of 15 trees for these 3 trees.
Okay, thank you. So now if we could just move very quickly to the planting plan, which is the final grouping of slides that I believe you've prepared.
Okay, so on slide 34, we just want to share with everyone the complete planting plan. We'll be planting 101 new trees, over 1,500 new shrubs, and over 8,200 new grasses on the site. And in terms of the overall design, the design intent is to replant as much as practical. And each face of the site responds in a way to improve the existing site condition. And the next slides will go over that. So on slide 35, along Fenn Street, we are going to replant new street trees along Fenn Street to improve the streetscape along Fenn Street. Along Tacoma Avenue, in addition to protecting the park-like setting on Tacoma Avenue, the new setback of the building gives us the ability to further enhance the tree canopy along Tacoma Avenue. Moving north to New York Avenue side of the building, because of the removal of the tennis courts and existing hardscape, we are able to replant additional trees at the core of campus and create a campus green framed by the new building, the Commons and the Resource Center. And that new campus green creates an extension of the existing mature trees along New York Avenue, extending that tree canopy even further into the core of campus. On slide 38, we also see opportunities at Upper Campus to plant new trees to replicate the look and the feel of the smaller courtyards that exist on campus today. And on slide 39, we are looking for, we found additional opportunities to plant just outside of the limits of disturbance, really filling in the spaces in between the existing trees along New York Avenue and finding a couple of spots along Fenn Street, just outside of the limits of disturbance. Coming back to the complete planting plan, in terms of plantings, the site features all native plants, no irrigation, and taking care to increase the diversity of the plantings. On slide 41, We are improving the biodiversity of the site, taking care to make sure that we have many new species. 23 different types of new trees are utilized to provide that biodiversity to protect the site against pest and disease. On slide 42, in addition to planting new trees, we are looking at the site in a total holistic three-dimensional way. And so taking care to plant new shrubs and grasses to soften the building base to create seasonal variety and interest, to again boost that biodiversity and to make sure that the local pollinators have the variety of flowers to use. On slide 43, again, just zooming back out to the site plan, we are improving the habitat as we restore the site after the initial disturbance. We are improving the biodiversity on the site, and we are improving the stormwater management on the site. And just to kind of take you through a series of views to look at that tree replanting in 3 dimensions. I just want to emphasize that if you look in 3 dimensions, all the trees are within the core of campus that are disrupted. There are views such as Fenton Street view that will appear to have more change, but as we work around our building, the existing Tacoma Avenue view and New York Avenue view will appear to have less change. Starting with slide 45, this is a photo of the existing view from Fenton Street vantage point.
Mr. Fu, I'm sorry, before you go on to the views, can you go back to the aerial, please?
Yes.
Using the aerial, can you just identify for the commission the areas of really the core area of the campus that we're looking at for tree removal?
Yes. So the core area of the campus for tree removal, if you recall, the existing Science South, the existing Falcon Hall, and the existing tennis courts are scheduled for removal. If you look at if you recall the earlier plan diagrams where Science South and Falcon Hall and tennis courts occur, you can see in 3 dimensions this existing tree canopy that is adjacent to these 3 structures. And so these large trees near Science South, Falcon Hall, and tennis court on this aerial map would not survive the removals of those buildings. And similarly, this grouping of trees just south of Falcon Hall would not survive those removals.
All right, thank you very much.
So moving back to slide 45, starting with a photograph of Fenton Street, existing condition photo. Slide 46, this is our rendering of that existing condition using the tools to the best of our ability to create a view that replicates the existing condition. On slide 47, this is that very same view with proposed plantings. And on slide 48, again, this is that same view with the proposed plantings having matured in 15 years. On slide 49, we're moving down Fenton Street, looking towards Falcon Hall in the distance. This is an existing condition photo. On slide 50, this is a rendered view of that existing condition. On slide 51, this is a rendering of the proposed building with the proposed plantings. And on slide 52, this is the proposed building with the proposed plantings in a 15-year time frame. On slide 53, we're moving further south to the intersection of Tacoma Avenue and Fenton Street. This is an existing condition photo. You can see Falcon Hall just beyond the trees at the base. On slide 54, this is a rendering of that existing condition. Again, you can see Falcon Hall just beyond the trees at the base. On slide 55, this is a rendering of the proposed building with the proposed plantings. And on slide 56,
let me just chime in with my chairman hat. What's at issue here in this appeal is the removal, the permit. So maybe summarize this. We can come back to it if there are further questions, but it's not particularly relevant to the question at hand.
Mr. Chair, it is at your pleasure. We had these prepared and they're available to show, but it is at your pleasure. If you do not believe we need to show, we're happy to close the PowerPoint presentation at this
Yeah,
point.
keep them handy if there are questions later. But I think, we get the idea.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Just very briefly, before we move on from the college's presentation, I just wanted to summarize that the purpose of the PowerPoint, again, was to show in a more user-friendly manner the project and why the tree removals are in fact necessary to achieve the project. I think the goal of the presentation was to give the commission a more full understanding of the full scope of the project, not just the proposed building, but all that is entailed to service the building, to make it function and operate as the Math Science Center. And so that was the purpose and intent of the presentation. And we have, again, as I said, supporting expert witnesses, the team who were involved in preparing all of the technical plans that are available here to answer any and all questions of the commission or the appellants.
Well, thank you very much. I would now like to invite the appellants to make their presentations. We indicated earlier that we would do it in alphabetical order by last name. I do not have at my fingertips a good list, so I might ask Mike to start off, but I see Colleen has her hand up. So maybe Colleen Cordes, would you like to start off? Perhaps you're,
Chair,
I think you're,
Mr. Chair,
yes?
before we get to Ms. Cordes, I was trying to locate my hand raising icon on my computer, but I wasn't able to get to it quick enough. So I apologize for not doing that. My name is Donna McBride, and I'm an attorney also at Miller, Miller & Canby with Ms. Lee Cho. And I just wanted to state on the record that based upon our review of section 12.12.110 subsection B of the city code, it is our position that a majority of the appellants did not comply with the requirements of that section. In particular, the requirement to allege with particularity the basis of their appeal. So I just wanted to state that on the record.
Okay, well, we'll address that when the appellants speak. Thank you. Okay, are we ready for the appellants? Are we ready for Colleen? Colleen, the floor is yours.
The first thing is I just wanted to clarify that when Mike read the names of the appellants onto the record, he did not mention my name. So just to include my name.
Oh, okay.
And I know I'm speaking under oath.
Okay.
I apologize for that, Colleen.
No problem, just
certainly-
clarification.
Certainly on the list, I just missed it. I apologize.
Okay. So I am going to be speaking to the three criteria for the tree commission to make its decision. The second one, the number and type of replacement trees. The fifth one, the extent to which the area would be subject to environmental degradation due to removal of trees. And the sixth one, the impact of the reduction in tree cover on adjacent properties, the surrounding neighborhood, and the property on which the tree or trees are located. And I want to start with the impact on the property on which the trees are located. My family has really appreciated being a neighbor to and sometimes student at Montgomery College. We love being on the campus, whether it was for a class, an event at the cultural center or a play, or just to walk on the campus to our bus stop across the park. And we love feeling that powerful intellectual energy and the way the college has become a global crossroads for so many young men and young women pursuing their dreams for a higher education. They deserve a first-class science and math facility. So that's the first thing, just to clarify that I know I and my neighbors all are very much supportive of first-class science and math facilities there and excited about that idea. But I'm concerned about the paradox at a time when one of the most important things that students can learn is how to save life on Earth, climate change, the environmental existential threats to our future. And while the college will be trying to do a first-class quality education in science and math, actions do speak louder than words. And it's a real environmental lesson for students to come back and see how many trees are going to be cut down. College culture historically has been connected to tree-lined campuses. And the students deserve a beautiful campus, not a clear-cut area there for their new facility. I understand, I really appreciate Mr. Fu. You did a wonderful job of outlining how hard the college has worked to try to balance a lot of different needs. But I am concerned that the neighbors were never really given a sense with all of the charrettes that there'd be this kind of extensive tree removal. And in many ways, the neighbors are able to look out for the students' long-term needs, because we'll be here year after year, and there will be generations of students that we're thinking about what kind of campus are they going to have and it's going to be in our neighborhood. So, and the other thing is with climate change, wonderful planning ideas, but we have no idea whether those trees will survive. And especially given the fact that so many of the trees are rated so low. And that's just of a whole section of the campus where you wanted to do construction. How is it that there are so few in good condition? And what does that foretell for the future if the tree commission allows you to cut all these down? There is no guarantee. You've got a great planting plan, but I'm really concerned about whether or not any of these trees will survive, or will they be in poor condition 5 years from now? And we'll never see that beautiful 15-year view that you're showing us. So I'm going to propose to because of this environmental degradation, of course, others can speak about how this will impact the North Tacoma neighborhood, the city of Tacoma Park, and just where we are nationally in trying to save trees as one of the least expensive ways of addressing climate change. But what I would propose to the commission is that they do a site visit. It sounds like Mr. Pitchford has not seen any of those trees. He simply looked at paperwork. And this is such a complex issue. I know Mr. Pitchford, if he did look at each of those trees, would do a fabulous job and might have some easy suggestions for things that could save some of those trees. I'm asking that the tree commission have a site visit, and that before you make a decision, and that you tour the entire Tacoma Park side of the campus to see if the poor record of tree maintenance documented for most of these trees, it was about 15% that were rated good. Either to check to see if that's actually the case across the whole campus. The tree commission historically has not looked favorably on applicants who argue that their trees aren't in good shape, so they therefore more easily should get a permit, or therefore replacement should be lower. So I just would keep in mind that that this is not something to set a precedent for making it easy for people to for a property owner to cut down 60 trees. And to make the argument that many of them were not in good condition. Why were so many of them not in good condition? If after the site visit, the tree commission judges that the applicant has a justified need to cut down every tree or some number of those trees, it could approve the permit with conditions such as requiring submission before the permit of a report from a city contracted arborist that is an inventory documenting the condition on the same rating scale the city uses of every tree on the Tacoma Park side of the campus. This would be to forestall future requests from the college for permits to cut down trees that continue to be poorly maintained. And another condition I would request is that the commission require an agreement from the college that it will commit to the actions necessary for it to qualify within 3 years as a tree campus higher education college, which is a program of the Arbor Day Foundation. The University of Maryland has qualified for that, but Montgomery College has not. The goal of that is to establish and sustain a healthy community forest on each qualifying campus. Among the things this would require Montgomery College to commit to is to establish a campus tree advisory committee, which should include students and also at least one representative of our neighborhood. It would also develop and follow a campus tree care plan, which would include goals, policies, and procedures for planting, protecting, and preserving the campus tree canopy. It would include integrating, and this is really a wonderful idea. And again, to cut down all of these trees, even if you end up having to do it, is a powerful environmental science lesson. So to commit to this new, to qualify as a tree campus higher education college would be a counterbalancing, powerful environmental lesson for students. And one way to enhance that is to begin integrating the campus trees with educational offerings on campus, including service learning and hopefully in environmental science and biology classes. And this could be part of qualifying for this program. This could be a positive outcome that we could all agree to from this sad pending loss of trees. And the other condition that I hope the commission will remember it has is that it may require the applicant to post a bond, a letter of credit, or some other security that would be equal to the tree replacement cost of trees for which a tree removal permit has been issued, and the cost of removing and replacing any tree or trees covered by a tree protection plan which die or become hazardous, including such trees that are on properties adjacent to the applicant's property. And again, the idea of that then, if you have a security for replacement trees, is we want to make sure those replacement trees survive also. Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have a question. If I have some questions, shall I wait until all of the appellants have spoken? Is that correct?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
All right, Mike, who's the next person alphabetically? And please turn on your mic.
Sorry, thank you. Of the people that I was aware of that are present, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the next person would be Mark Holliday for Miss Raphael.
All right, Mr. Holliday, would you like to take the floor? Have we lost him?
Need to unmute.
Yeah,
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
we hear you. Yes, and we see you.
Yes, thanks so much. Good evening. My name is Mark Holliday. I live at 7422 Buffalo Avenue. And I'm here tonight speaking on behalf of my neighbor, Allison Raphael, who lives at 507 Albany Avenue. He's an appellant who was unable to participate in tonight's hearing. I affirm this information that I provide is under oath. The Montgomery College mission statement and statement of principles towards education is clear and straightforward. However, they are far removed from being a long-term commitment to the sustainability of the tree canopy on the Tacoma Park campus. Based on inconsistencies and omissions in the applicant's submission, the city's preliminary approval of the tree removal permit did not contain sufficient terms and conditions to ensure the tree protection plan would be conscientiously followed, nor that the replanting schedule would be sustainably implemented. The intent of this appeal is to prevent the surrounding areas from being subject to environmental degradation due to removal of the trees. Proper mitigation and permit conditions can ensure the successful reforestation and replanting of the urban forest canopy. To this end, the Tree Commission should evaluate the current experience and commitment of Montgomery College to the stewardship of the tree canopy on their campus. Looking at the applicant's data in City Exhibit D, one can examine the health and condition of the trees subject to this permit application as a proxy of their current care. Of the condition of the 67 trees rated by the city arborist, 82% of their trees are only in fair or poor condition. Only 15% were rated in good condition. This means on average, you have to walk around and look at more than 7 trees on campus before finding one in good condition. This does not appear to indicate good stewardship. 2 measurement discrepancies in Exhibit D are relevant to Montgomery College's tree care conduct. For trees that were rated for condition by both the applicant and the city arborist, 63% of the time, the condition of the same tree was rated higher by Montgomery College. Of the 67 trees rated for condition, only 7 times did the city arborist say the condition was better than recorded by the applicant in Exhibit D. Is this bias towards better health rating a fatal flaw in the college's approach to tree care? While condition may be somewhat subjective, measurement of diameter at breast height, DBH, should be more straightforward. However, the applicant's measures of DBH were consistently smaller. Almost 3 out of every 4 trees measured, as shown in Exhibit D, as was shown in Exhibit D. Smaller trees are generally considered less valuable, and at very small diameters fall below the minimum threshold for the permit process. Given this relatively poor tree condition status and imprecise attention to tree permit measures, it would also be valuable data for the commission to know what amount of funding the college spent in the last 3 years on Tacoma Park campus tree care, including maintenance, pruning, fertilizing, disease and pest treatment, etc., and whether the trees were under the care of a full-time certified arborist. These are areas of tree care that clearly need, campus tree care that clearly need improvement. Why is this relevant to the permit? Given the removal of some significant part of the canopy under the permit and the stress of construction, the protection of the remaining canopy will be paramount. Knowing what the experience and capabilities have been, are presently at hand, as well as going forward, will reveal and document the applicant's commitment to the entire maintenance arena, not just for tree protection in and during the construction. The long-term sustainability of the canopy should be an important element for the tree commission in setting up final conditions of the permit approval. Given the relatively dire snapshot of the tree canopy condition for the trees proposed to be removed, are there other implications for the permit approval? The tree commission does not have sufficient data to evaluate the magnitude nor condition of the balance of the tree canopy on the campus. Absent data provided by the applicant, one must assume the same relative condition exists throughout the campus. However, even assuming 15% of the total canopy is in good condition, there's still no data provided by the applicant to evaluate the impact of the reduction in tree cover the permit allows on adjacent properties, the surrounding neighborhood, and the property on which the trees are located, one of the 9 appeal factors the tree commission should consider. What is indisputable, though, is that trees have a positive environmental impact by reducing atmospheric carbon as they sequester CO2 in their roots, trunks, stems, and leaves while they grow. Trees also modify climate and conserve energy use by shading, by evapotranspiration, and by tree canopies slowing down winds, thereby reducing the amount of heat loss from a structure. Moving forward, however, with the permits without full canopy loss impact analysis is high risk, especially with a permanent replacement of trees by the larger footprint of this heat absorbing structure. However, in the absence of complete data, the tree commission should act conservatively and be risk averse to irreversible environmental degradation and impact on adjacent properties and the surrounding neighborhood through the tree cover reduction effects of these local microclimate and environmental changes. While the tree commission may not be able to conduct a full analysis, at a minimum, it can determine what part of the Tacoma Park tree canopy is in the Montgomery College campus and what % is being lost by the permit approval. Then it can determine a proxy for ecosystem goods and services lost and convert that into a dollar value. For example, using City Exhibit D and the Arbor Day Foundation website National Tree Value Calculator, the proposed trees to be removed annually remove over 30,000 pounds of carbon from the atmosphere. This value can be converted by the tree commission into carbon offsets to be purchased by Montgomery College and added as a condition on the permit as mitigation for the foregone CO2 sequestration goods and services of the removed trees. As the permit's reforestation plan is implemented, over the 25 years and the canopy grows out, the declining balance of this carbon offset bond would reduce to zero. This action would be entirely consistent with the city's 2020 climate emergency response framework. In setting up a new stewardship role for the college via replantings, it would also be important for the Tree Commission to evaluate the college's tree policy stewardship experience, commitment, and performance, information that was also not in their application. The Tree Commission should request the applicant supply data to evaluate the college's performance over the last 5 years with respect to existing tree policy goals contained in the Montgomery College Climate Commitment Strategic Plan 2016 to 2021. Specifically, strategic goal number 3, engaging the community, item 10, which says increase campus tree coverage and maintain existing trees on campus. This calls for investing in initiatives to support the goal of 30 to 40% tree coverage across campus, including targeting to plant 50 trees per year for 5 years, investigating funding opportunities for the initiative, identifying areas of campus with unused lawns suitable for trees, and identifying already existing trees that will soon need to be replaced. The relevance of this information is knowing that was accomplished for the Tacoma Park campus in each sub-item will provide evidence of the experience and capability to follow through on tree policy goals and what specific kinds of terms and conditions may be warranted to ensure compliance with the city permit. If progress was not made or funding was an issue, then that is important information for the Tree Commission to know. Such evidence might suggest a trust fund be established as a permit condition to dedicate the resources needed to maintain and nurture the replanting of up to 152 deciduous and evergreen trees for generations to come. The required long-term funding to care for replanting will exceed the terms of the current college president and the city mayor. Without adequate care, the entire restoration of the canopy and its benefits to residents, climate change, and the environment, which we are only willing to give up temporarily while it regrows over 25 years, will be at great risk. The community has a lot at stake, and the actions recommended here as permit conditions are the bare minimum to ensure the college is accountable. We do need a state-of-the-art science and technology education facility in our historically underserved part of the county. However, it would be a disservice to future aspiring STEM students and a soil to their new home if we were to dismiss the environmental and climate sustainability consequences of the college's tree permit actions on the surrounding community. On behalf of Alice and Raphael, I thank the members of the Tree Commission for their service and for listening to this appeal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mike, who's next alphabetically?
Next, I believe we have.
Sorry to interrupt again. I had my hand raised. I wanted to just, on behalf of.
I'm gonna stop you because the rebuttals can be done at the end. Otherwise, we will really get off track, I'm afraid.
I just wanted to lodge an objection to the last witness who had not submitted any appeal whatsoever. And we had no notice that he would be providing any testimony here this evening.
He's
That's
providing testimony on behalf of an appellant. I'll let Mr. Rind address the legality of that.
Your objection is noted for the record, Ms. McBride. And certainly for future purposes, if you don't mind, we would appreciate it if you just stick to our format and trying to keep the meeting moving. And you can raise the objections when your turn comes back around, please. Our next appellant is Stephanie Murphy.
Ms. Murphy, are you there?
My husband.
Yes, we're here.
All right.
Stephanie and Ron Murphy. I think all we want to say is that Mark Holliday and Colleen Cardizes articulated our concerns very well, and we support their suggestions. In particular, we would like to see the city do an on-site survey of the trees in an effort to hopefully retain a few more mature trees, possibly. That's all.
Thank you very much. Who's next?
I believe the next appellant would be Julie Schmidt.
Schmidt?
Thank you. I think I'm supposed to state my address. I'm Julie Schmidt. I live at 7710 Tacoma Avenue. And I realize I'm speaking under oath, although I don't know what difference that makes. So I'll keep my comments short. Like the Murphys, I really want to speak in support of both what Colleen Cordes and Mark Holliday, speaking on behalf of Alice and Raphael, have recommended. I did also, though, want to speak specifically to process with this tree permit, because I think there are some real concerns about that. And I wanted to register my dismay at the change in the numbers and the college not disclosing that to the community, and also the breakdown between the intent of the resolution that the Tacoma Park City Council passed in December of 2018 and the actions of the Tacoma Park city staff around the permitting process. And I think both of those are relevant to how we got to where we are. Just a brief recap, in December of 2018, the City Council approved Resolution 2018-63. There we go. Sorry about that. This resolution expressed the will of the City Council regarding the building project at the college, and included the following language: the council expects the college to consult and work with the community on stormwater and tree protection and replanting, especially as those factors affect water runoff and related impacts on nearby residences. So that was the language in the resolution. I took place in a number of the charrettes with the college. The last information that I am aware of that the college presented to the community on tree removal was on September 10th, 2019, at a meeting where a question was raised by the community about number of trees to be removed. And at that point, what was represented was that 40 trees would be removed and 70 would be replanted. The next time I heard anything about trees was when the permit signs were posted on the campus in March, and we're looking at 60 plus trees being removed. So that's just a concern. There was no engagement with the community about the reason that the tree amount changed. I mean, it may be correct. Like Colleen, I would really think it would make sense for Mr. Pitchford to visit the site. The community has requested through our city council member that we could visit the site, and that was denied us, but it certainly seems like the college may let Keith Pitchford visit and assess if the assessments were correct. But when the community members were getting ready to file our objections to this permit, the then arborist represented an email to community members that he wasn't, because we requested of him, why was the city council language not followed? Why did the city staff not engage the community on this? What he represented to us in email was that he was never made aware of that city council resolution, and he was not aware that the community was supposed to be engaged on this. So that was dismaying, and I raise it because I think it's pertinent. If the community members are being told, like, listen, the city council passed this resolution, you were told you were going to be involved, but I didn't know you were supposed to be involved. I didn't involve you. So that was very disheartening for those of us. Enough about that. Like other members of the neighborhood, and I have to say my property confronts the college. My backyard faces Pavilion 3. And, and this speaks to, I think, number 6 in the criteria you consider about environmental impacts. That Pavilion 3 had an environmental impact on those of us who live on Tacoma Avenue. My basement floods now. I am concerned about tree removal. I'm concerned about the impacts on, continuing stormwater management in North Tacoma Park. It is not clear to me that an assessment has been done about how this removal of trees, and I understand there's a really aggressive replanting plan, but it takes a long time for trees to grow up and their roots to really sink down and, for them to really absorb the water. So I have real concerns about the impact on the neighborhood. I do support the college building, the new science building, the Catherine and Isaiah Leggett building. I am proud to live in a neighborhood where Montgomery College is. It was one of the reasons I moved to this neighborhood. My husband has taught at the college. So, this isn't some sort of town gown type of problem. I think most of us who live in the neighborhood really appreciate the college and appreciate the cultural benefits of having the college in the neighborhood. But I did just, want to raise these concerns about process. Like other members, I want to encourage the tree commission. I guess I want to speak in support and emphasize my support for Colleen and Mark's proposals. I especially want to encourage the tree commission to schedule a site visit before granting the permit to determine if indeed all these trees are in the condition that has been indicated. And I also want to encourage the city to work with the campus to institute the tree advisory committee, as well as to commit to the Arbor Day Foundation's tree campus higher ed standards. I think that's a really positive, would be a very positive development and would send the right message, to the surrounding community about the commitment of both the college and the city to mitigating climate change. And I also want to speak in favor of the bond proposal, and I think there were a couple different models of it. Colleen had a model, Mark had a model, but, some sort of trust fund or bonding around this, so that there's some skin in the game and so that we know the college actually lives up to its commitments around this. Thank you.
Thank you. Who is next on the appellant side?
Of the list that I have, Mr. Chairman, I don't have any other appellants. If they're
Right.
in the participant thing, if they could raise their hand, but I reviewed the list and I don't see anybody else.
All right, I don't see any raised hands.
I believe that would be it.
All right.
And
So, oh, wait, here's a raised hand. Julie Bodie?
actually, she's an attendee, Mr. Chairman, so
Oh, okay.
not technically a participant.
And she's not listed as a appellant.
That's correct. She is not.
Okay. In that case, we will move on to the city for cross-examination.
Mr. Pitchford, I'm going to take a leap of logic here and assume that you don't have any questions for the other people, or please tell me if you do.
I don't.
All right. Then to the college.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The college does not have a cross-examination need for cross-examination of any of the witnesses but we would like to have time for rebuttal and addressing of some of the issues that have been raised. If you can indicate when that would be the appropriate time.
Okay. What I would like to do is go back to the appellants and then ask the tree commission members if they have questions for any of the witnesses, and then open it up for more discussion. Does that work for you, Mike? I need you to unmute.
I should learn that in about 10 or 15 years.
Yeah.
Yes, that sounds fine with me. For the appellants, if they have any cross-examination at this time, and then if there's a need for a rebuttal, I would call it a rebuttal as opposed to an open discussion, but then that would be appropriate after the appellants have their chance to go.
Okay. In that case, I'd like to open this up to other tree commissioners for questions they may have. Should we go alphabetically again, starting with John Barnwell?
I don't have any questions at this time. I defer to my other commission members.
Okay. So let's see. Cohen comes before No? Yeah. Nancy?
I just want to affirm, Mr. Pitchford, you made your presentation based on the paper reports that you received?
Yes, entirely.
And so I can, so I'm understanding that you never were on the campus.
That's right.
And to a member of the college, when you have done other projects in other parts of town, to what degree have you done, made allowances for a bond or a trust fund as an indication of your commitment to manage the forestry on that particular campus?
On behalf of the college, I would like to answer that question. The college complies with bonding requirements to the extent that they have voluntarily made the decision to cooperate with local regulations. I'm not aware that the City of Tacoma Parks tree ordinance has a bonding requirement. So that if that's something that is missing from the ordinance, I don't know that the college would necessarily, we'd have to take it under submission or consideration whether they would do bonding irrespective of the fact that the city's regulations do not require it.
I'll go back to the nature of my question, which is, have you done that at any other locale? In other words, if you've worked in the Rockville community, have you done something like that on behalf of the Rockville community?
If it's part of the local regulations, they have provided that, yes.
And what form did that take?
I'm sorry?
What form did that take?
It depends on the local jurisdiction, whether it's a performance bond or a letter of credit.
That's all, Bruce.
Okay. Carol Houghton.
Yeah, Nancy has actually covered the questions that I had, so I don't have any further questions. Thanks.
All right. The next tree commissioner last name is Levine. So I will ask a question for Julie. Sorry, I've lost your last name.
Schmidt.
Schmidt. Hi.
Hi.
You said earlier that the college had not disclosed the number of trees to the community that they were removing, but then subsequently you said when they filed the notice that it did include that number. So I'm just trying to clarify what was not disclosed.
Correct. So my understanding under the both under the resolution that was passed in 2018 by City Council and vis-a-vis various meetings that I attended with the college was that the college was going to keep the community informed. And the last time the community was engaged, I will say the last time I am aware of, and I went through the records of the various charrettes, the last time the community members, received any information about how many trees were being considered for removal was, I wrote that down and gave it to you. I think it was September 10, 2019 meeting. And what was indicated at that time was 40 trees would be removed, 70 would be planted. The next time I am aware of that any of us in this neighborhood were made aware of how many trees were going to be removed was when Jan posted the tree permit notices on the property, and it was for significantly, more than 40 trees. And that was in March, right? March of 2020. I can't remember if it was after the city was locked down or before, but that's when that happened. And so, I suppose technically we were noticed in that the permit was posted, but I don't think that complies with the spirit of how the engagement with the community was supposed to work. Because that depends on you walking by the college, seeing this little placard posted, and I know, and yeah, anyhow.
Thank you. I know the college will want to respond to that, but I'm going to ask you to be patient. Write down your rebuttal and you'll have a chance. If I can turn to Mark Holliday, you said, I think I can't read my own handwriting, but something about inconsistencies or omissions in the application. Can you specify what those some of those inconsistencies or omissions and why you feel they were material?
Yeah, so you have to forgive me. This is my first Zoom meeting, so I'm a little iffy on whether I'm speaking and being heard or not. So the inconsistencies that I was speaking to were the examples I was giving about Exhibit D, between what was being presented as the measurements and the status of tree condition between the Montgomery County and the city arborists. Mm-hmm. The omissions were information about the ability of the applicant to provide a sustainable condition for the long-term health and care of the tree canopy on campus. For example, there was at the time of the application, they had did not include in the information in the application that there had been an emergency stop work order issued at the work site for removal of those trees that I think Mr. Fu had mentioned on February 10th, which were taken in advance of the permit application being approved, preliminary approval of the permit. So the tree commission didn't have, or the city did not have the full information in front of them as far as all of the facts in front of that would be relevant to understand the true commitment of the applicant with its respect to long-term sustainability of the canopy. So those were the kinds of the things that I was saying in terms of relevant information about its commitment to the sustainability of the canopy and inconsistencies in the types of data that were in the application on measurement compared to what the arborist was saying and on condition and size of the calipers.
All right, thank you very much. Keith, back to you then. Do you, and I realize that you jumping into this may not have the facts at your fingertips, but do you, sorry, Keith Pitchford, there was a stop work order. Has that stop work order been lifted? And have the conditions that led to that stop work order been satisfied to the city's satisfaction as far as you know?
I know nothing about that, unfortunately.
Okay. Is there anyone else who can or would like to comment on that from the Department of Public Works?
Me being the only person that fits that description.
Oh, it's funny. That's exactly who I thought.
My memory is foggy as to whether or not the stop work order was lifted. It was issued in response to construction activity related to abatement taking place without a tree protection plan or a tree removal permit. since both of those applications are still currently in the works, no construction can take place until those are finalized.
Daryl, could you just identify yourself and your
Oh,
position?
I'm sorry. Daryl Braithwaite, the Public Works Director for the City of Tacoma Park.
Thank you.
Okay, so let me then turn that question to the university. And then I'll have one more question for the university. Probably different people will want to, sorry, the college will want to answer it. So on that stop work order, can the college tell us whether that is still in effect or not?
There is the stop work order, for the record, Suli Cho with Miller, and Canby. The stop work order, to the extent that it applies to exterior work that could have an impact on trees, is still in effect. The respect to ongoing activities on the site, internal demolition activities, those are ongoing, but they're not, exterior to or impactful on the trees.
And the stop work order is specific to exterior work.
That is my understanding, yes.
Okay. Thank you. And now my other completely unrelated question is, can you or someone else from the college briefly describe for us the system the college has in place for the maintenance and care of the trees? Particularly, does the college have a certified arborist on staff or on contract that is responsible for maintaining the health of the trees on campus?
Yes, and I would like to ask Steve Mays to be recognized.
Yes, Steve Mays.
Steve, can you identify for the record and acknowledge that you are under oath?
Yes, Steve Mays with Carroll Tree Service, and I realize I am under oath.
Can you just briefly indicate what is your role and function relative to the college project?
So I was asked to join to oversee tree preservation measures of the project.
Mr. Chair, I believe that Mr. Mays would be the most appropriate witness to help answer your question in terms of at least the near-term implementation of the college's tree protection and planting plan.
Okay. So, Mr. Mays, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
You are a certified licensed arborist?
Yes, sir.
State of Maryland. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And how long have you been contracted by the college?
So for the college, for just this process, we have only been involved for about a month.
Okay. Did you replace someone or you were brought in for this tree protection program?
I was brought in for this tree protection program.
Okay. And is there a term for your contract or it's just the at-will situation?
I would consider it at will.
Okay. All right. Thanks. I won't.
I ask one more question.
Okay. I have a few hands up. I'll get back to you, Nancy. All right.
Thank you.
I actually have one as well too, but it can wait.
All right. I'll put you on the list. All right. So I don't know. I'm sorry which hand went up first. So I'm going to do it on who appears first on my list. Donna McBride.
Thank you. And I apologize for interrupting earlier. I'm not quite as well versed as probably all of you in terms of the protocol for these. And I apologize for my dog in the background. He chose just now to start barking. So
All right.
I did want to make sure that we note for the record that the only witness who's appeared this evening and provided testimony that had even remotely met the standards of the code was Ms. Cortez. None of the other witnesses, only Ms. Cortez and Mr. Wheel, who did not appear this evening, provided any detail, any particularity at all in their request for an appeal. So none of the other witnesses did, and I just wanted to note that for the record.
Okay. Duly noted. Thank you. Colleen, Cortez is the next hand up.
I have a number of questions. Should I ask them all or just one?
Depends on the number.
Oh, maybe 4 or 5.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So first for Keith Pitchford, Mr. Fu indicated that there was a disagreement between the college and the city arborist about some of the trees, whether they would be removed. The arborist was reporting that he thought they needed to be removed because they were actually within the footprint of the building. But the college is now clarifying that no, they're not in the actual footprint of the building, but that their critical root zone would be so affected that the tree should be removed. So my question to you is, if you made a site visit with the tree commission, isn't that the kind of issue that you would be expert at and that the tree commission should really review about not just for those particular trees where the college doesn't agree with the arborist description of that reason for removal, but quite likely for other trees as well?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
My second question is for whoever can answer it. I will, and it's about the stop work order. I think that's a very key part of this whole process that has not been clarified for the commission. And it speaks to whether or not the college will be a good partner going forward with the replacement and replanting and the tree protection plan and care and maintenance for other trees on the campus. And so I just will report that the former city arborist emailed myself and a few other people on March 31st that he had discovered that the college had gone ahead and begun removing trees, even though they did not have a permit and they did not have a tree protection plan, and that he immediately issued a stop work order. But if you look at the number of trees that had already been removed on the exhibits, Exhibit D, and on the college's new exhibit, supplemental exhibit, it looks as if 8 trees were prematurely removed. 3 were a majority of the tree was damaged. So
Colleen, let me interrupt you for a second because if you have an exhibit, an email or something like that, that's one thing. But if for you to be reporting what you heard from another party is a little bit, I think, unfair in this process.
Well, I will ask the college. That will be the question then to the college. Is
okay.
Anything inaccurate? Let me just finish. And another tree had been significantly damaged by a contractor. That's 11 trees that were removed without a permit and with no tree protection plan, and 1 tree that was significantly damaged by the contractor. And I would ask the college, is there anything in the statement I just made that's incorrect?
So before I answer the last question, there were multiple questions in there, Ms. Cortez. I would like to address a misstatement on your part. We did not testify that we disagreed. Mr. Fu did not testify that he disagreed with the characterizations of the city's Exhibit D in terms of the reason for removal. His testimony was to indicate that the issue is more complicated, that it's not just that the trees are within the new building footprint. It is that it's also impacted by demolition activity. It is not either or, it is both. So the trees that have been identified or for further comment by Mr. Fu, it is not his testimony that those trees will not be impacted by the new building. They will be impacted by the new building, but they will also be impacted by demolition activity even before we're talking about putting the new building on the site. So with regard to your query to Mr. Pitchford about an on-site visit, the on-site visit is informative at some level to understanding the location of the existing trees relative to the existing buildings. But the impact of the project, which is the scope of this tree commission, the hearing, factor 1 of the 9 factors necessary for finding, is to understand the scope of the development and the use that is proposed for the property. And that is first and foremost. And that was the intent of the PowerPoint presentation that we made today. That is the content and substance of all of the technical documents that have been put forth by the college, not only during this process, but prior to, and all of the design development processes relative to the mandatory referral. The building that was approved under mandatory referral has been further refined, as testified this evening by Mr. Fu. But the building that is now before this commission is the building, that is the project. The scope of the project is defined. We have defined it this evening in very great detail. And the locations of the trees are all known. They have been surveyed. These plans, these technical drawings, were not drawn in a vacuum. They were drawn with a very specific survey done well in advance of having developed the development plans for the project. So respectfully, I understand that the community believes that a site visit might be interesting and informative for the community. We otherwise probably would have accommodated a site visit, but for the current pandemic. But in terms of going forward, what is the deciding factor for this tree commission? It is the college's position that it is not necessary. A site visit is not necessary in order to be able to evaluate the facts of this case and the evidence presented and to render a decision.
All right. Can you answer Colleen's question about whether she correctly characterized the stop work order? Or whether there was anything incorrect in what she said?
In terms of the, I really apologize. If Ms. Cordes could possibly restate her question.
That I received an email on March 30th from the former city arborist. And he said that he had, actually, I'll say a little bit more about what he had in one paragraph, is that he had been working with the college in 2019 on trying to come up with, on the whole, knowing the college was trying to develop a tree protection and application for tree removal, but no permit or tree protection plan had been issued. And he found out that trees were being removed. Okay. And he went to the site, he noticed that trees were being removed. So he issued a stop work order immediately. And that what I am adding, just from looking at the exhibits that have been presented tonight, is that there were 8 trees that were removed prematurely without a permit. There were 3 that a majority of the tree was removed, and so that's 11, and there was a 12th the contractor had significantly damaged. So I'm asking, is all of that accurate?
So I'm going to take your question and divide it into 2, because in terms of the number of trees that were impacted, Mr. Fu has that information to be able to answer. The college does not dispute that there were trees that were removed prior to the completion of the tree removal permit process, which includes reaching an agreement on the replacement calculations with the city, which includes finalization of a tree protection planting plan, and that there were trees that were removed prior to the completion of that process. We do not dispute that. The circumstances of that tree removal and the information related to respond to your question can best be answered by Mr. David Coleman of Barton Mallow, who is the general contractor on this project. He is available, and I would ask him to acknowledge or be recognized and state your name and address for the record and acknowledge that you are under oath, and please answer Ms. Cordes' question.
Sure. This is Dave Coleman, project director with Barton Mallow. 300 West Pratt Street in Baltimore is our company address, and I acknowledge that I'm under oath. I think that complied with that part of it. It was a mistake that those trees were removed. It was during the abatement, as Mr. Few had documented, in trying to minimize cutting of exterior panels and possibly putting additional asbestos into the air that wouldn't happen. So the college was not aware of those circumstances when they occurred. So it was not a blatant disregarding from them. It was a matter of safety. We were trying to go through it, and it was a mistake. Hopefully that answers the question, Mrs. Cordes.
I wonder if you could clarify that, as I understood it, as I understand the timing, the city arborist had not even inspected each tree and given it a rating. So it was very early in the process of applying for a permit. I think a permit application had been submitted, but he had not been on site to review those trees.
I'm not familiar with where he was in the permit process, as we aren't obtaining permits for that project. Mr. Q or the college may be able to speak to where that process stood at that time.
And I can help with that question, Ms. Cordes. What do you have the date of the stop work order?
I know that I've looked. I don't have the date right in front of me. I've looked at the dates that everything happened today, and it certainly seems clear. And that's something the commission can obviously clarify. That the stop work order happened before he actually spent a week reviewing the trees on campus. It took him a week.
Right, but the stop work order was this year, right? 2020?
Yes, 2020.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. The college applied for the tree removal permit and submitted its applications. The very first date was in February of 2019. The evaluation of the trees on the campus and what was slated for removal at the time was begun in February of 2019. Jan had responded, had a site visit in 2019, had been working with Mr. Andy Striegel of A. Morton Thomas with regard to the plans that were submitted back then. There was a revision of the initial submission, even in 2019, which was evaluated by Jan. And ultimately, the plans were even rejected in December of 2019, those plans. So there was a whole year of back and forth in terms of evaluation of the trees in question. It was an iterative process and an evolving process. So I guess I would disagree with you that Jan had never even evaluated the trees at the time of the stop work order. He had already had quite a bit of exposure to the campus trees because we had started the process a year before.
I'm sorry, I meant that he had not officially rated any of the trees. He had not done what is required under the tree ordinance for the college to receive a permit. And as you said, he had rejected the plan in December and was surprised to see that without more conversation with the college, suddenly trees were being cut down.
All right. I think that's been well established. Can we move on to your next question, Colleen? Because we have a couple people waiting.
Yes, just a clarification. How many trees are on the campus of Tacoma Park? And will all of the trees that are going to be replanted be on the Tacoma Park side of the campus? Just to clarify that.
I don't think we can tell you a number of, you're asking for the number of all trees located on the campus?
That would be nice to have, but at least I think at the very beginning, someone said something about the number of trees that are of a large enough size to be regulated under the Tacoma Park ordinance. So how many trees on the Tacoma Park side of the campus are there? So we know what percentage of the canopy on the Tacoma Park side of the campus is going to be lost. And how many of the replanted trees will be on the Tacoma Park side of the campus? Originally, I saw something where the college was thinking of planting them on the Silver Spring side, some.
So I would ask Mr. Fuku just to go back and restate the numbers in terms of how many regulated trees, unregulated trees that are being impacted by the project.
No, I'm not asking that. I'm asking for the whole Tacoma Park side of the campus. What percentage, what's the total number of trees large enough to be covered under Tacoma Park's ordinance? So we can all know what is the percentage of the Tacoma Park tree canopy, or it won't be exactly the tree canopy percentage, but will give us an idea of the tree loss, the scale of the tree loss on the campus.
We do not have relative percentages. I can guarantee you that. We have the numbers of trees that are being impacted, which is the requirement under the tree ordinance to define which trees which are regulated, which are unregulated. Those have all been identified. Your broader question is something that and Mr. Fu, you can identify otherwise, but I am pretty certain that we're not able to answer that question this evening.
Okay, I think that certainly speaks to criteria number 6, which is the impact of the reduction in tree cover on the surrounding neighborhood and the property on which the trees are located. Thank you.
All right, is that it, Colleen, for now?
Yes.
All right.
I might just add that on the original application documents that we have, the college did an inventory of trees that included 167. So Mr. Fu may want to speak to that, but that was my understanding of the total number of trees on the site.
I have seen a map, and that includes some of the trees in the right-of-way across the street. I don't think that's college property, but there are numbered trees that are in the right-of-way across Tacoma Avenue.
All right. Well, let's come back to this if necessary, but I'd like to go back to Nancy Cohen and then to John Barnwell.
Thank you. So this is addressed to the college. I think that I think many of the neighbors are excited about having kind of a lovely campus there, but what I think is concerning, and I just want to check to make sure that I'm seeing this correctly, is that whether there has been a history of care of that canopy of the campus prior to the last 2 years, because I think that at least for a year, there's been a lot of fencing up, and there may have been a sense that the trees were going to go anyway. But is there a historical perspective on care of the canopy, and also what type of oversight does the college are going to provide for the construction company? I'm concerned about those mistakes that were made early on, and is there an opportunity to provide that type of oversight?
Thank you for your questions. At this time, I would like Susan Madden to identify herself and address the first question with regard to the college's overall approach and mission and desire to maintain trees on its campus.
On the Tacoma Park campus.
On the Tacoma Park campus.
So good evening, everyone. My name is Susan Madden. I work at Montgomery College and I reside at 504 Loudon Court in Silver Spring. For a big picture,
you know you're under oath, right?
Yes, thank you for that reminder. I should know that. I am under oath and I recognize that. As a general matter, the college prides ourselves in being environmentally aware and taking care to be good stewards of the environment. I think one of the appellants referenced our climate change plans that we're working to advance. I just was corresponding with my colleagues. We have staff that are underway in getting their certifications as arborists, as direct college employees. We have contracted arborists with us. And we see this project as a big opportunity to advance our commitment to the environment. We well understand the state of those current trees, and we understand in part the status of their trees is in due and large measure, not because of lack of maintenance, but because of how they were originally planted. This project will enable us to correct and rectify 3 major things on this campus: the lack of ADA accessibility, the lack of stormwater management that is not present on that part of the campus, and to finally plant trees in a way that is environmentally sound and will contribute to the tree canopy going forward. We, of course, are a public institution and are limited in our ability for maintenance, given the expenditures that we receive for the county and the state. Given the feedback I've heard here, I certainly will go back to my colleagues and look at our budgets and make sure we have the right appropriations that we need to care for these trees once we get them planted.
So I can infer from your statement that historically, and I'm not going to count the last year. I mean, there's been the fencing up and a lot of crazy things going on. And so, but prior to that, there has really been no initiative on the part of the college to routinely prune trees, mulch trees, and to ensure the life of the canopy there and replant.
No, I wouldn't say that. I would say that we have a strong facilities maintenance team who do their best to take care of the landscape that we have on our properties. That's across all 3 of our campuses. And we know the value of trees, and we understand them as an aesthetic value, as a shade value, as the environmental value, and we work hard to maintain the trees. My point was, when we developed this campus 40 and 50 years ago, which is the age of these buildings, we didn't know about ADA, we didn't know about climate change, and we didn't know about stormwater. Now we know all of those things, and this project affords us the resources to do what we need to do to better meet environmental goals and objectives that we share with the community and the Tree Commission.
So are you saying that there have been positions allocated in the budget to ensure ongoing care of whatever plantings? Because once the construction's done and, you know, the architects leave and the builders leave, this is the maintenance and the care is going to be in the hands of the college. And just curious if that has been a line item to ensure that that
Sure. We have a strong facilities teams that are dedicated to taking care of our grounds. Let me speak louder if I'm not getting that through. My point that I was trying to make was, back in the day, we didn't know how to plant trees appropriately, right? You can see we had trees right up against the foundations of buildings, right? And we have them all planted close together. That's no way to have a long, well-sustained tree canopy. And we've learned that, and the experts that we've hired on this project, Smith Group in particular, was hired not only for their expertise in designing science and math classrooms, but also because they're experts in environmental site design. And we made sure we brought on appropriate arborist teams, both at A&T and our landscape contractor as well, to help us better plan and have a real planting plan that is meaningful and will improve the canopy and will be sustained in the future. We do have a facilities budget, and we will maintain these trees appropriately.
Thanks. All right. Nancy, if you've got nothing further, I'd like to turn it over to John.
I'm fine with that. Thank you.
John?
Yeah, I think this is just a point of clarification for me. So there were a number of different numbers thrown out, but all of the exhibits that I reviewed indicated that the city and the college were in agreement on 59 trees as being the replacement number and the fee in lieu accordingly, as well as planting on site. I just want to make sure that there's no dispute about the 59, at least between the college and the city.
I believe that the 61 figure that was identified by the chair at the start of the hearing, as explained to me, is inclusive of 2 trees that started out as unregulated size, but over time may have grown over the length of this project to a regulated size. So that's just the discrepancy of 2 trees between the 59 that is in the college's materials on the PowerPoint. So I'll just break it down. 56 trees that's the number that we've identified as being impacted by the project. Demolition activity, construction activity, new building. 3 trees are the 3 street trees on Fenton that were taken down by the city because of their bad health. And so that gets us to the 59. And then in addition, we have the 2 trees that have more recently been elevated to regulated tree status. All that said, it is my information, and I would ask Ms. Braithwaite to confirm that the most current calculation for the replanting requirement confirmed by Mr. Pitchford more recently is 152 trees is the replanting requirement when you take that 61 trees.
Okay.
And in response to the 152, the college's current proposal is to plant 101 trees in and around the project area, not just on the project site, but the surrounding area of 101, and then to address the remaining 51 trees with the payment in lieu.
Got it. Thank you for the clarification. That's what I had. I just wanted to make sure.
All right. All right. I think we are coming toward the close of this. I'd like to do, Mike, I see you mouthing something.
Bruce, just note that Colleen has her hand up. That's all.
Colleen has her hand up. Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to go around again and just ask people for final questions or comments, and then I'd like to shut this down because Tree Commission still has to discuss amongst itself what we heard tonight. So let's go back to the city. Any further comments from the city, Keith or Daryl?
Yeah,
I just want to point out that Mark Holliday also wants to speak.
Okay.
I do have a point, Bruce. The paperwork I read didn't discuss the 101 planting and then the 51 fee in lieu, but it makes sense to me now, but I don't recall reading that. I thought it was mostly fee in lieu, but anyway, I'm glad that was clarified. The other point is that I think I heard Mr. Mays say that he was just brought in a month ago to do a tree protection plan. So I'm wondering if there was any tree protection work done back in 2019 during that initial visit with AMT. I don't have all the background paperwork, but I know that there's generally a tree impact assessment form that gets submitted, and then the request for a tree protection plan is made. But am I correct in hearing that the tree preservation plan was only put into place in the last month?
No, that is not correct.
Only Mr. Mays came in the last month.
Correct. A. Morton Thomas.
So A. Morton Thomas did it before that.
And is still doing it. So A. Morton Thomas is still on the design team, and they are the lead specialist in the field in terms of developing the tree protection plan, and did all of the applications, and they're still involved. I introduced Mr. Mays this evening in response to then who will be responsible for taking those plans and making sure that they are then implemented appropriately during the construction phase, and making sure that the trees that are planted are done so in accordance with the plans.
And are there long-term maintenance specifications with that?
There are long-term maintenance specifications that we envision would be recommended by Mr. Mays, that then would be carried forward by the college's facility management team.
And that's for existing trees and new trees? Existing trees that are impacted plus new trees?
The existing trees that are being preserved, protected, as well as the new trees that are being planted in the replacement calculation.
Okay. That's it for me.
All right, thank you. Daryl, you had something to say?
Only to point out Mark's raised hand.
Oh, right. Okay, sorry. All right, then college, you have anything further?
I do, and I really had not had a chance to sort of address and rebuttal some of the testimony by Ms. Cortez. While I didn't want to cross-examine Ms. Cortez, there were some statements made that I wanted to specifically address. She highlighted for the commission factor number 2, factor number 5, factor number 6 among the 9 factors. While her restatement of the factors, I don't disagree with. I do disagree that any of the factors that are within the purview of the Tree Commission to review this current application would give the Tree Commission any reason not to affirm the tree removal permit that was preliminarily approved. We have shown this evening with our presentation that all of the trees that we're talking about are necessary to achieve the proposed development. We have testimony indicating that there have been alterations, there have been modifications to plans to address very particular trees that were raised of concern by the city arborist, to the extent that the limits of disturbance of the project site was so constrained that a donut hole was created essentially around a single tree in order to protect and preserve that particular tree. This is a plan that has been very detailed and evaluated to great extent with a great team of experts. The number and type of replacement trees as testified by Mr. Pitchford has been confirmed and evaluated. He has looked at the rating and has found it to be consistent of the trees. He has found no inconsistency between the city, major inconsistencies to speak of between the city's evaluations and the college's proposed plans. Clearly, there is a hardship if the tree removal is not approved. It literally is these trees, if they could have been avoided, the removal could have been avoided, they would have been avoided. We were talking about a greater number of trees for removal that has come down to the number of 59. The number of trees mentioned by Ms. Schmidt of 40, back in when they were having design charrettes, that number was something that was estimated even before the mandatory referral process was even complete. So, there has been testimony this evening, a lot of allegations, a lot of consternation of what has happened. But I think that based on the plans that have been presented to the commission this evening, it is absolutely clear that the trees that are being lost as a direct result of the fact that they can't be avoided. Whether it's the building, the demolition, utilities needed to make the building function, if there was a way to reduce even one additional tree, save one additional tree, that would have been looked at by the college. And to factor 6, to say that the factor 6, which says that the impact of the reduction in tree cover, on adjacent properties and surrounding neighborhood, that yes, that is an overarching evaluation that the Tree Commission looks at. But there is canopy loss. We can't avoid that. The trees are in conflict with existing buildings and the new building. But when taken together, which is another factor, which is one of the other factors that the Tree Commission is supposed to look at, when taken together with what the college is proposing to put back into the urban canopy, and to do so in a way that then achieves a current urban canopy that is planted properly, as testified by Ms. Madden, is designed in a manner to thrive and not to be in conflict with the physical improvements of the college. And so on balance, when you take all of that together, that is what the commission is to look at, not just in a vacuum. If this was a question of, is it going to result, what percentage of canopy loss are we going to lose? And based on that loss, we can't move forward. If that was the only factor, I think that this would be a very different conversation. But obviously the commission has those 9 factors because it's all a balancing act. And it's not just the one issue raised by Ms. Cordes that essentially is a deciding factor. I just on the college's behalf, there was a lot of testimony about participation in qualifying for this program. I would, in conversations with the college, that's something that they will look at. It's not something that is obviously a component within the purview of a condition of approval for a removal of a tree, the approval of the tree permit. But it certainly is consistent with the college's mission and goals, and the college would certainly take a look at that program. And I would just say, I would close by saying that the process issues that have been identified by some members of the community, while it's perceived that there wasn't early consultation, trees have always been at the forefront of the college's mind in terms of knowing that it is a highly sensitive issue. It's an important issue to the city of Tacoma Park. You can't reside and be Montgomery College and be in the city of Tacoma Park and not know that that's a big issue. And that design team has always had that in the forefront of their mind. And to minimize loss of trees has been a mandate of the college to look at the design of the building and to do everything it can, including push the building away from the park-like setting of the corner of Fenton and Tacoma Avenue to preserve that park-like setting. So everything that we're talking about in terms of where this project has been back to the mandatory referral process has evolved around the conversation of trees. So I dispute the allegation that somehow trees, it was the last thing that we thought about. And in terms of the resolution that was adopted by the city council in terms of consultation, it wouldn't have made sense to consult with the community until we had a plan that essentially was real. And whether you wouldn't want that consultation on a plan that was for a 40 tree removal back before the mandatory referral. Well, we got that plan in the last couple of years, and more recently this year the plan solidified. And the plan, and there was every intent to have an in-person meeting to present the college's final tree removal proposal. As we all know, the pandemic hit and we had to make some quick shift in gears. And the virtual meeting that was conducted at the end of June, on June 23rd, was pulled together in order to meet not just the spirit of that resolution, but to directly address the requests by the city to have the community engagement on this tree issue. So, on behalf of the college, we believe that that everything has been done. Everything has been done in good faith. There was a mistake made in an early removal of the tree, but again, this is not supposed to be a punitive process. This is a review of a tree removal permit, and while mistakes are made, the team that is in place, Mr. Mays and Barton Mallow, have all of provided the professionals in order to make sure that the plans that have been developed and now is in a position to be approved by the city will be done so meticulously, carefully, and with the oversight that I think we all want to see occur. So with that, I don't think I would have anything further. I think I've previously said that we do not believe any further on-site evaluation of the existing trees really goes to any of the findings that the Tree Commission really needs to make a decision in this case.
All right, thank you very much. So I have two hands up, Colleen Cordes again, and then Julie Schmidt. I was told that Mark Holliday has his hand up, but I'm not seeing that. So, but Colleen was the first. So Colleen, go ahead.
I'm sorry, my hand feature is not turned on, so I have not been able to get recognized for the entire evening.
Okay, I'll get you after Colleen then. Colleen, go ahead.
I just wanted to respond to a couple of things that the college representatives have said.
There is no value in having the last word on this commission, as you well know. So if you're
I
going
don't
to
want the
repeat
last word.
something you
Just
said before,
clarification.
don't
No,
bother.
clarification that the June 23rd virtual meeting came well after the college had applied for a permit, I believe in February, had not received it until late March, a tentative permit. So that meeting happened well. It was much too late to be consultation with the community when you already have your tentative permit in hand.
Okay.
And I hope that the commission will take seriously this request for a site visit. I think there's been enough discrepancy in the way the college has described the city arborist finding, who is not here tonight. And I think that would be, and I think that there's enough trees at risk. And we know that if Mr. Pitchford was involved, that would be a very expert review, that given the complexity of the issue and the conflict around this, it seems it would be helpful for everyone. And I have one very short question, which I asked before, but I don't think I heard the answer. Sorry if I missed it. But will all 101 of the trees that are going to be planted be on the Tacoma Park side of the campus?
So I can answer that question.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, so all 101 trees will be planted on or about the new building. So in the plan diagrams I shared, that is the location for the 101 trees. Some of those trees are just outside of the college property boundary, but most of them are within the college property boundary. Does that help answer your question?
All in Tacoma Park, not the Silver Spring side.
Correct.
Okay.
And I know what you're trying to get at is that the common or the student center, half of it's in Silver Spring and half of it is in Tacoma Park. And
no, I didn't really mean that. I meant across the bridge. You'd had some information earlier suggesting you would plant some of them across the bridge. But thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay. So then Mark Holliday. Mark?
Yeah.
You're up. You have to unmute.
Thank you for your patience with me. There's no mute on my screen, so I've been trying to get your attention, but I appreciate your bearing with me. I just wanted to say I appreciate the dialogue here, and I wanted to say it's good to have communication because that's the key to resolving conflicts. I wanted to make sure that the college understand that nobody, as far as I can tell, on the appellants are saying that these trees are not going to be cut down, and that nobody's saying that the building is not going to get built. I mean, that's not anybody's statement that I heard tonight. So I think if you're walking away from the meeting with that in your mind, I think we haven't been communicating very clearly. So I think what we're trying to get to is that we want to know that there's going to be appropriate accountability in the tree permit that is issued, that it includes appropriate conditions to ensure that there is sustainability for the trees that are left and the trees that are going to get planted. And that there is going to be some degree of appropriate mitigation because the trees that are planted, there are going to be very small trees. There are going to be a lot of them, but according to the college's own data from the charrette that was held on June 23rd, and the documents that they posted online, they said the total caliper of the trees that are being removed is 818.5 inches, and the caliper of the 95 trees at the time that's in the document is 237 inches. And so, I mean, there's a great difference in the size and the ecological and ecosystem services that these trees are going to be producing at the outset. And so there's an immediate impact on the environment and the contribution that these trees are going to be producing. And Bruce, you know, I'm trying to reflect on your question to me earlier about what was omitted. There's a big dilemma here in trying to answer these criteria for the tree commission. You know, what data was not in the applicant's permit is, well, they weren't required to give you any information about what the impact was on the neighboring environment, on the environment in the neighborhood, or on the impact on the adjoining areas. It wasn't a requirement. So it's up to us, you know, it's a rebuttable. We have to provide you the facts and provide you information about what the ecosystem services are. And so it's really tough to talk to criteria number 6 with any authority, because, you know, we don't have the resources of the taxpayer funded consultants that the college does to go and conduct the science to provide it. So I tried to provide some approximations for what some of the value of these trees were that are being taken out, and to give the tree commission some ideas of how to look at mitigation. But I think that's what the basis is here, that there's going to be a loss, there's going to be an effect on the climate surrounding Tacoma Park and the neighborhoods from the tree cutting. The trees are going to come out, but there should be some conditions set to try to ameliorate that effect for the neighborhoods as part of the issuance of the permit.
Thanks.
So thank you for the opportunity to participate, and wish the commission good luck in moving forward.
All right. Thank you very much. Julie Schmidt, I saw your hand was up, but then it went down again. Did you want to speak?
No, my only point was the one that Colleen made, that June 23rd doesn't count as consultation because the appeals were filed in early April. So that's 2 months after we even appealed the permit.
All right. So Ms. Sue, I see your hand is up again. I'll repeat my earlier statement. There's no value in having the last word with this commission, but go ahead.
I just wanted to provide a data point that I don't know if it came through in our presentation, but of the 101 trees that we're planting, the city's requirement is to plant at 1.5 inch caliper. All of the trees at just 1.5. But of the 101 that will be planted by the college, only 5 are at 1.5 inch caliper. The remaining are all at 2.5 inch caliper. So, we understand that there is, yes, an immediate canopy loss, but the college is doing what it can to give it a head start, and is providing plantings at a larger size at the start, to allow for a faster achievement of that replacement urban canopy. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that brings us to the end of this hearing then. I want to thank everyone for being very courteous and professional and thorough and willing to answer questions and ask questions. The Tree Commission will now have a separate meeting in which we deliberate, and we will provide a written decision within 30 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.